Okay.
Greetings and welcome to the weekly educational round here at Seclair. My name is Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist operating out of Seclair, and today I'm joined by two of my favorite colleagues. On my left would be...
I'm Erin Fitzpatrick. I'm a physician assistant student from Seton Hill University.
And on my right?
And I'm David Zimkowski, physician assistant student from Mount Union.
So for those who have tuned in before for our weekly broadcast, we try to present a topic that's relevant not only in scientific educational circles, but also can be freely adaptable into your own life. And today we're going to be continuing our series on the synthesis of 12-step recovery, dialectical behavioral therapy, and behavioral change. And Erin, DBT, 12 steps, the mindfulness aspect of it, it's kind of a synchronicitous type of merger. Synchronicity is where 1 + 1 can equal 3. And in this particular instance, when we add these two modalities, we end up with something that perhaps is a real joy to behold. So what I'm going to ask is to set an intention for today's broadcast. And Erin, could I ask you what would your intention for today would be?
Because we're going over steps 3 and 4, I just want to understand them better so that I can help explain them better to patients or friends in the future.
Right, and before we go any further, I want to again add the disclaimer that I do not represent nor speak for any 12-step fellowship in existence. These are merely reflections of the 12-step program that can be adapted freely and incorporated into every single individual's life, not necessarily an individual that's in addiction to any type of substance or behavior. So, and Mr. Dave, what would be your intention for today?
I'd say my intention for today would be to help all of you out there overcome any problems you may be facing in your current day lives or addictions or anything like that.
Wonderful. A noble intention.
Skills today. Yeah.
A noble intention. So what we're going to do, we're going to start. Last broadcast we did steps 1 and steps 2, and if you'd care to go back and review them, you can always go to www.seclair.com, go under the blogs. You can find all of our broadcasts on there, or you go to YouTube, iHeartRadio, or wherever the magic medium will take you to. So step 3 is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood the Creator. And what a lot of people misinterpret that as is that we give up free will. However, incorporating dialectical behavioral therapy into that particular step, we incorporate the use of wise mind. And you've been here for a bit. Erin, could you possibly tell us what your conception is of wise mind?
What my belief of wise mind is there's 2 parts of the mind that you use. It's either the rational mind, which is your logical thinking through a situation, gathering all the facts and just kind of looking at the situation that way. And then you have the emotional mind, which is more your emotions towards the situation, like anger, fear, like sadness. And the wise mind is when you can look at a situation using both of those minds together. You can be rational and logic about it, but also emotional about it as well.
Absolutely. Very, very, very good explanation. Well said. Well said. So an emotional mind, emotions are wonderful. They color our world. They're our internal barometer. They're the rainbow of our lives. That's how we give information and receive information from different people. However, when we operate strictly out of an emotional mind, we quite often act impulsively, and we react rather than respond. Dave, I imagine you've been at a grocery store where there's been a 3 or 4-year-old in line at the cashier.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you, where do they put the sweets and the chocolates or the nice shiny flashy stuff? Do they put it at your height?
Definitely not. I remember being a 4-year-old, and they definitely put all the candy right at eye level of 4-year-olds.
Right, and the marketers have mastered psychology. So I would suspect, Erin, that you've also seen some fairly emotional scenes at the checkout line.
Oh yeah, kids with temper tantrums screaming, "I want this piece of candy or that piece of candy," and their parents are like, "No, you can't have it."
And that can be a stressful situation, and sometimes there can be some impulsive choices and some rather poor choices. So then we turn to a rational mind, and I'm going to date myself a little bit by talking about Mr. Spock and the human computer, the logic, live long and prosper, as my friend Mike just mentioned to me. And so let's using a strictly rational, logical mind, and we need these things. We need it to balance our checkbook. We need it to make executive decisions. We need it to make logical choices in our lives. However, if we don't incorporate some emotion into there, so Aaron, Dave, and I sit and we make a rational decision to feed the starving children. We make a rational decision to feed the starving children. However, without allowing any emotions to play into it, we spend the next 6 months trying to decide whether to feed the boys first or whether to feed the girls first. Where if we would have played some emotion in there, it would have been first come, first serve. Let's just feed the children. Right. So the idea is how can we incorporate a wise mind view into our life, given the fact that developing a bond and a relationship with a higher power, with the Creator, and again remembering that a whole lot of the purpose of these 12 steps is for ego deflation and to remove the bonds and barriers that remove you from a bond and a connection and embrace with a higher power in your life. And I'm sure that both of you have heard Dr. Chaudhry mention frequently about the need for a spiritual type of connection, a spiritual foundation, a spiritual base to a person's life. Could you comment on that, Aaron?
I know a lot of the times when Dr. Chaudhry talks about it, he talks about like the physical person and then the spiritual person, and if those two aren't connected, then you're going to have something's going to be off. And a lot of the times, if you don't believe in a higher power, that could really set you out.
Be kind of a lonely life, wouldn't it?
It would be, yeah.
A lonely life. And how arrogant or egotistical would we be to believe that we're the end all and the be all, that we're the highest form of evolution? Would you say that we are the highest form of existence, Dave?
I'm not so sure. I think there's still a lot out there that we don't know about exactly.
Well, sure. And in 12-step recovery, those first 3 steps are known as commitment steps, where we make a decision. However, it's action and effort, as we discussed last week. It's action and effort that incorporate yourself into behavioral change. Very difficult to think your way into behavioral change. We behave our way into different thoughts and actions, which leads us to the action steps. And action steps are steps 4 through 9. And in step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We make a list of behaviors we need to change and recognize the positive strengths that will help us build these changes. I know that there's a lot of research out there, some very learned individuals who poo-poo the 4th step as saying that it incorporates too much guilt into it. However, that's not the purpose. Or you can explore all different types of workshops, different worksheets, books on how to do the 12 steps. However, the instructions are simple and they take about a page and a half. And what it involves, this is again one of the most misunderstood steps in 12-step recovery. It is not a life story where you would have Erin write a book on her first memory to her last spot 5 seconds ago. What it involves, Dave, it involves 3 lists. Okay, it involves fears, it involves resentments, and it involves the sex list. Okay, so in these lists, an individual makes 4 columns, and in the first one, let's deal with resentments first. We'll deal with what you're angry with. Okay, what you're upset about. What is irritating you in your life, and then in the next column you would put, well, what causes it. In the next column, you would put what it affects. What does this affect in my life? It affects my self-esteem. It affects my self-concept. It affects my pocketbook. It affects my relationships. However, the 4th column is the most important one, and that's the part you played in it. That's the part I played in it. And I would say that there's very few resentments that you have in your life, Aaron, that you didn't play some small part in.
I think everything that I resent, that we kind of have a little bit of part in it, and if we're not trying to make a change or fix it, then it's not going to ever get any better.
Well, absolutely. You have to remember that when on this inventory step, it is your inventory and not the other person's, not the other person's at all. So, have you ever considered the part that you played in a resentment when you're really angry with somebody or upset about a wrong that's been done to you, Dave?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Well, sure. Well, sure. Even something that you're not actively involved with, you made a choice to allow that to interfere with your life, to allow that to have a resentment. So, and then we move to fear. And again, fear is one of the most misunderstood ones also. You can be either afraid of bunny rabbits, you can be afraid of the dark, you can be afraid to be alone, for fear of dying, many things. But the fear that most people leave out of this particular list is the fear of being found out. And every individual in their life has something that they've either repressed, forgotten, or so skillfully hidden that they would never want to be brought to the light of day again. Never, ever, ever. And it may not be significant to someone else, Aaron. However, if it's that to you, then it's very significant, and that's called carrying a big stone around with you. And Dave, it's our secrets that keep us sick. And sometimes our secrets are like vampires. What happens if you expose a vampire to the light?
It burn up.
It dissolves, doesn't it? And all these secrets. How have you ever carried around a secret, Aaron?
Oh, yes.
How much energy does that take?
It takes a lot of energy.
And were you ever concerned with somebody finding out?
Oh, all the time, yeah.
Well, sure. And the thing about the truth is that you only have to say it once. You only have to tell the truth once. And it certainly improves your memory. It certainly improves your memory. However, spitting out that truth the first few times may be like gargling with tacks and then spitting them out onto the street. So the idea is this is a fact-finding and a fact-finding inventory where an individual gets right with themselves and cleans up their side of the street. So let's turn to the sex inventory, which is probably the most understood part of the step in all of the 12 steps. And it's not consensual sex. It's not your orientation. It's not the number of partners that you've had. It's not the acrobatic positions you've been in. What it involves is where you've been involved in a selfish or dishonest emotional or sexual relationship with another human being, where you've been selfish or dishonest in a sexual or emotional relationship with another human being. And that's hard stuff to look at. That's hard stuff to look at. Do you ever feel you used anybody, Aaron?
Yeah.
Absolutely. How about you, Mr. Dave? You ever feel like you used anybody for your own selfish purposes?
Right now, but I'm sure it's happened to all of us at some point in our lives.
Right. And actually, could you share just a little bit about the 12-step meeting? What were your impressions of the 12-step meeting that we went to a few weeks ago, Aaron?
I thought it was very interesting. It was different than what I was expecting. I was expecting to walk in there, have a room full of people, and they just talk about all the troubles in their lives, and are very negative about things and dark. But it was more of an uplifting. There was a woman there who was having an issue in her life, and she explained what was going on, and then everybody in the room pretty much said something to encourage her and to lift her spirits and to get her thinking in a different way. And it was really cool.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. And so as we continue on this series of 12-step recovery, we're going to be looking deeper and further into these action steps and how, along with dialectical behavioral therapy, these things can incorporate in your life. So as far as DBT skills, as far as the fourth step goes, would be taking a non-judgmental stance. That would be to stand back and being an observer behind the thinker, being an observer behind the actor, like you're seeing a movie, Dave, without beating yourself up about it. Okay, this is to being able to observe and describe thoughts, feelings, emotions, behaviors without responding to them, without allowing them to causing you some distress and interference in your life. And much of it, again, involves radical acceptance, Aaron. radical acceptance, use of the wise mind, identifying and labeling emotions. So what we want to do is first identify, as we often do in dialectical behavioral therapy. How often do we speak to somebody about identifying and labeling their feelings and emotions?
Pretty much every single DBT session I've sat into.
Well, sure. And have anybody ever asked you, Dave, how do you feel? And you says, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Well, sure, that happens often. So I'm going to ask everyone out there is how can we effectively deal with thoughts, feelings, and emotions, behaviors if we don't understand them? And one of the ways that we deal with radical acceptance is that it's not approval, it's not resignation, that it's always going to be this way. However, this is just the way it is in this particular moment. And until we accept something, there can't be any positive change. There can't be any positive change. Well, next week we're going to continue on with our journey, our mindfulness journey into dialectical behavioral therapy and the incorporation of 12-step recovery involved in a change in your thoughts and a change in your actions, a psychic change. And this doesn't involve crystal balls. What it involves is a change in your thoughts and a change in your actions. So anybody out there that's interested, we'd certainly welcome you to continue on with our series. Perhaps if you care to, join the first one. And we would always enjoy any comments or questions directed to us.
To continue the conversation, please like us on Facebook, plus on Google+, or follow us on Twitter under Seclaria Life, and keep an eye on any of these for our next live recording Mondays around noon, and ask your own questions.
And we would certainly incorporate this into your lives. We're going to, as we always do, we're going to give you our standard prescription that we leave you with at the end of every recording, and that would be fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and perhaps take up fishing, and maybe you can have a mindful expedition on what my friend Sven and I are going to do this afternoon, and that would be fishing without bait. So until we get to join with you again, please be good to yourself. That's my intention for your day.